So, nearly 5 years to the day that AEW first opened its doors, revealing AEW Double or Nothing back in 2019, we now celebrate the 5th year anniversary with AEW Double or Nothing 2024. And obviously, the main talking point is the Anarchy in the Arena match. It would see the Elites, Matt and Nick Jackson, along with the likes of Okada and Jack Perry, taking on Team AEW with Daniel Bryan, now known as Bryan Danielson, FTR, and Darby Allin. In what was really an entertaining match. I mean, with these Anarchy in the Arena matches, it has set the precedent on what their take on like a street fight or hardcore wrestling really is. And I mean, this match had it all. I mean, you talk about potential manslaughter, you had arson, multiple shots to the head, literally just the epitome of what hardcore wrestling is in today's world of professional wrestling. Seeing these athletes put themselves through what they put themselves through. I mean, it really took my breath away. There were many moments in the match where I caught myself, taken aback, wondering, wow, what are the limits that we're willing to reach, especially in today's world of pro wrestling? And obviously, the main talking point was the flamethrower spot, where Darby Allin emerges from the back with the very same flamethrower he had on AEW Dynamite this past weekend. The way they set it up, I still can't believe it was done. So we see Jack Perry coming back from the parking lot where he seemingly hits Darby Allin with his second car accident, and he brings out Tony Khan to the arena, where we also see Darby Allin with the flamethrower in hand, and Jack Perry throws Tony Khan. He rolls down the ramp, and Darby Allin continues to pursue Jack Perry, setting his pants on fire with the flamethrower. And if it wasn't enough, once he was lit aflame, Darby Allin would again reapproach him just to make sure he got him. And keep in mind, regardless if Darby Allin had the protective wear, the proper equipment on his pants, on his lower limbs, he had nothing on his top half. So, and to see the level of quickness that the staff was able to act upon by extinguishing the flames, it still doesn't change the fact that a man was set on fire on live television, live pay-per-view, if you will. And that wasn't the only main spot that people are talking about. Obviously, we saw Darby Allin being hung upside down in the middle of the ring, where the Young Bucks would have on their latest footwear, the Young Bucks shoes, the pump-up Reebok, and they had, of course, the very now infamous shoe with the thumbtacks on the bottom. And they would both hit super kicks on Darby Allin, which was very convincing. Obviously, we know that these are trained professionals, but they definitely connected with Darby Allin. And to see him swinging back and forth again, hanging upside down above the ring for a long period of time, was very alarming. You even heard the crowd chanting, please help Darby. And we saw to the point where Bryan Danielson would reach up and trying to lend a helping hand to his partner, Darby Allin, only for Jack Perry to come out and hit him with his own running knee, gaining the pinfall, earning the victory for Team Elite. Clearly, it's the talking point of the pay-per-view itself. Aside from that, one of my favorite spots in the matchup was how the Young Bucks and Bryan Danielson were basically fighting over the proverbial aux cord, as the Young Bucks, in classic Anarchy in the Arena fashion, would decide to play a song a la New Jack. Obviously in ECW, when New Jack would come out and start out some kind of brawl, he'd have his music playing in the background. AEW, in a sense, pays their tribute to that by having someone's theme song playing in the background. Of course, we started with the Young Bucks, but then Bryan Danielson had the arena play his classic theme song. Of course, everyone knows The Final Countdown by Europe. And it was perfect. It was the perfect song selection. We saw a lot of the fans participate, singing along with one of the great songs of all time, certainly from the 80s. But then one spot that really got me to pop as a fan was right when the chorus was about to hit and the crowd was going to join in on the line, The Final Countdown. We saw Darby Allin hitting a coffin drop from the stands, falling onto his opponents. And again, just a great match, just a great showcase of 8 of the very best that AEW has to offer. But that wasn't just the only match that really stood out for me. Obviously, we had Swerve Strickland successfully defend his AEW World Championship against Christian Cage in what I anticipate to be one of the more fun matchups, and I think it lived up to it. Obviously, we saw interference from Nick Wayne and Luchasaurus, now known as Killswitch. Of course, there was Mama Wayne as well. Prince Nana got involved. Just a fun classic tale of two of the very best that the division has to offer. Christian Cage coming off one hell of a run as the TNT champion and really probably the top heel in the company. I enjoy his work ever since his WWE days, but I feel like this run in AEW has only elevated his legacy in terms of one of the very best. And it's good to see that Swerve Strickland is still able to have these quality matchups with a lot of his opponents. I know some people have been giving AEW some flack because of how they promote him on AEW television, given that he's fighting these like 15 to 20 minute matchups against the likes of like a Brian Cage or a Kyle Fletcher. I'm all fine for it. I'm all fine for it because when you're fighting on pay-per-view, certainly against the likes of Christian Cage, as long as you're showcasing your talent and demonstrating why you are the world's champion, have at it. And I'm a fan of Swerve Strickland. I love what he's doing with this world title and having these great matchups. I don't see the hate for how they've been promoting him. I mean, I get it. I do. But this matchup in itself was fun. And there were moments where I even caught myself thinking, were they going to have Christian Cage actually win the title? Obviously, they didn't, which I think is the right move. I think Swerve Strickland, freshly new into his title reign, should hold on to this for a while. But if they had dropped it to Christian Cage, I probably wouldn't have complained as much because I love his heel work that he's been doing with the company as of late. And speaking of a fellow Canadian, we look at the barbed wire steel cage match between Malachi Black challenging Adam Copeland for his AEW TNT Championship. And this was probably one of the matchups that I was really looking forward to. Obviously, we had the triple main event, and I'll get to the TBS title in a moment. But the TNT title, certainly for the stipulation, the barbed wire steel cage match, in essence, it's what I look forward to because it's a throwback to Adam Copeland, then known as Edge, and a lot of references to his matchup with Mick Foley at WrestleMania 22. One, for example, where they had the barbed wire covered bat and having it, scraped against the forehead of Adam Copeland, a throwback to that. So that was a real welcome sight. I love what they did with the House of Black and the inclusion of Buddy and Brody King. Seeing them out was always fun. And there was a moment in the matchup where I myself even thought they were going to pull a double turn. You saw for a moment there that Adam Copeland was going eye to eye with Malachi Black. But then you see his partners, Brody King and Buddy Matthews, switch sides and go over to Adam Copeland, kind of suggesting that they were aligning themselves with him and not with Malachi Black. And you kind of saw this facial expression, the body language of Malachi Black, almost as if he was a sympathetic babyface. So there was a brief moment there, and then they got me, that I thought we were about to see a double turn and see maybe Adam Copeland turn into the heel leader and then Malachi Black as a babyface. Obviously, that wasn't the case, but for a brief moment, they were able to execute that to perfection. And obviously, they would go back into the cage and resume the matchup where we saw an unexpected cameo by Gangrel, a former member of the Brood alongside Edge and Christian back in the late 90s. Very fun. It was great to see him. And there was a rumor that he wanted to have Gangrel a part of his matchup at WrestleMania 39's Hell in a Cell match against Finn Balor. But just differences in creative, and they wouldn't allow it. But to see Gangrel, back in the whole vampire getup, it was a fun treat. And to see Adam Copeland emerge victorious, successfully, retaining his title. I'm now curious to see where we move in the story. Are we going to continue this storyline with Malachi Black? I still feel like there's a little bit of a meat on the bone here, and we can't just throw it away. But other than that, I'm curious to see where we move on with that championship. But again, speaking of championships, Mercedes Moné would defeat Willow Nightingale for the AEW TBS Championship, a title she recently just won at AEW Dynasty, a little over a month ago by defeating Julia Hart. I think this was obviously going to be a title change. Being that it's Mercedes Moné's first matchup in AEW, I don't think you're going to have her lose. Certainly for a title as, a high-profile feud that they've been building with Willow Nightingale. It's a perfect showcase between the two and just a great matchup. It demonstrates why I personally believe Mercedes Moné to be one of the best women's wrestlers in all of pro wrestling. And it was a great showcase for Willow Nightingale as well, demonstrating her qualities as a sympathetic babyface, especially given the ending of this segment where we saw Chris Statlander turn heel on her good friend Willow Nightingale. So clearly, we know where Willow's going to be heading towards now. I mean, if she takes some time away, I think maybe a week or two might be best. Kind of let this moment simmer, give Chris Statlander a moment or two with Stokely Hathaway, and have that promo where she can explain why she did it. And then obviously have Willow Nightingale come out and confront her. And then we lead to this great matchup because I can tell you right now, these two will have a street fight. Given the fighting style and the quality of matches that Willow and Chris have had in the past, I can already see this going to be off into a blood feud, having a street fight, perhaps at an all-in. I don't know if they're going to hold off that far, but I could definitely see this having a big payout. And I'm very much looking forward to it, especially because with AEW, they know how to book these long-term blood feuds for the most part. Obviously, there have been some slip-ups, but I feel like they do have that in the sense that if you're patient enough, we're going to have some slip-ups, but in time, they'll be addressed. And speaking of slip-ups, a lot of people criticized last year's, Who's the Devil storyline. And in that sense, we had a major return, two major returns, really, as earlier in the night, first off, let me just congratulate Will Ospreay for winning the International Championship, which I think is well-deserved. Obviously, I called that. I didn't see them having him lose early on in his tenure with AEW. So to win the AEW International Championship, I'm hoping it gives it an opportunity to elevate it to a much more prestigious title. Right now, there's a lot of championships going around, and some of them are found in limbo. But having it associated with someone like Will Ospreay will only benefit. And following that matchup, obviously, as I mentioned, Adam Cole would return. And to see him, to see the interaction with the audience and see them still participating with the boom and the Adam Cole Bebe entrance, fantastic. But what everyone is really talking about, and what I think was sorely needed for AEW, was the return of MJF. MJF clearly is their best star. And that's no disrespect to guys like Bryan Danielson, guys like the world champion Swerve Strickland, but what MJF offers is great character work alongside great in-ring work. He's much different than anybody on that roster. He has this aura, this presentation about him, and I'm hoping that they're able to strap the rocket to him again, because last year was a great reign for MJF. Obviously towards the end it kind of began to sour, but you look at him, the energy, he looks different. He came back in better shape than what he already was. So to see him come back and clearly is all in with AEW with that new tattoo, he's a lifer at this point. If AEW were to get bought out by anybody like WWE, okay. But for the time being, MJF has clearly made his stance that he is all elite. And I don't blame him. He was there since All In. And having been one of those homegrown talents, I'm curious to see where we go from here. Obviously, they're not going to give him the world title too soon because he held it for nearly a year. But to see how they continue with that presentation, obviously they're riding the fine line of babyface and heel. He's becoming pretty much the biggest babyface in the company, which is ironic enough because he was the biggest heel in pro wrestling. And now he's undeniable. You can't help but cheer the guy. Again, not only because of his in-ring work, his character work, his mic work. It has become enthralling and intoxicating, really, to watch his progression as a character, whether it was his feud with Cody, whether it was his feud with CM Punk, or even the AEW World title reign that he just had this past year. So I'm curious to see how they move forward with it. I thought overall the pay-per-view itself was a great show. It was a fun show. I mean, I enjoyed, like I mentioned, the Will Ospreay matchup. I enjoyed the Trios tag match, which saw the Death Triangle unsuccessfully defeat the Bang Bang Gang for the Trios Championship. I thought the Timeless Tony Storm match was also a good matchup. Of course, I've mentioned the three main events and the cage match. Just a solid show, and I feel like AEW is really good about presenting quality matchups on their pay-per-views. I see that the only main complaint is sometimes you have to let it breathe. You have to give it a moment to settle in. For example, I saw one complaint that the Chris Statlander heel turn. That's a big moment. To see someone like Chris Statlander, who is a beloved babyface, ever since her return last year, defeating Jade Cargill for the TBS Championship, ultimately that is a moment that's going to resonate with a lot of fans, especially with the equity that has been placed upon Willow Nightingale. And from there, we quickly just dove into another video package, and that was that. Obviously, we're gonna get further explanation on AEW TV, whether that be Dynamite or Collision. But I think that's the one thing that they, could use a little bit of pacing. This pay-per-view did, last a little bit longer than 3 hours. I believe it almost hit the 4 hour mark. I didn't feel that way once we got to the Anarchy and the Arena match because I thought that was just a fun matchup. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, certainly one of the longer pay-per-views they've had running. But what did you guys think? What did you guys prefer in terms of your match of the night? What did you think of the Anarchy and the Arena match and the spots that they had throughout the course of that matchup? Do you think it was the right call to have Mercedes Moné unseat Willow Nightingale as the champion? How Swerve Strickland's reign going so far? Any criticisms you have about AEW or any positives? Again, this is a safe place to talk about pro wrestling. It is the greatest opportunity that I have because I get to have the opportunity to talk with all about pro wrestling with all of you guys. The one thing that has brought me so much positivity and so much happiness, and I'm glad to be able to share this with you guys. So again, feel free to throw down in the comments what you guys believe about the pay-per-view. What do you think about moving forward with the AEW product as well as the channel? Of course, you guys can follow me on all social media sites at JustJose_3. And please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, allowing the channel to continue to grow. You guys are doing great numbers. I highly appreciate it. And I have nothing but much love for the support that you guys have thrown my way. And I look forward to bringing you guys more content as well as the J Area podcast, which you can find every week here on YouTube as well as Spotify or wherever you find your podcast. And with that being said, again, my name is Jose Ramos Jr., and I'll see you guys in the next video.